Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, dear colleagues around the world. Thank you very much for joining us today for our International Translation Day webinar 2025. So we are talking about AI and the trust equation, rethinking education and training in the age of intelligent systems. And I'm very interested in hearing what the next speaker has to say to us, because this person is not exactly a translator or an interpreter as such, but has a very interesting profile that you already saw and that we already described. So I'm giving the floor to a person who is a musician, who is a professor and teaches a very interesting course about kindness. He will tell us himself. A composer, an ex-mayor, a punk rocker and a professor, Mr. Phillip Bimstein. The floor is yours. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you very much, Olga, for that warm welcome. And thank you to Guillaume for your inspiring speech, and to Maria Chiara and Juan Carlos. I am very inspired by your talking about empowering us and about emotions, raised eyebrows, and subtleties, some things that I may touch upon. I'm thrilled that you've invited me to join your wonderful webinar and that I get to be here with all of you, my fellow presenters, and all of you in attendance. I admire so much the work that you do as translators, interpreters, and terminologists, and your promotion of peace and trust in these turbulent times. And I'm humbled to be here because, as Olga said, I'm not a translator or interpreter in the beautiful way that you all are, with your enormously valuable skills for making the words and expressions of a writer or speaker in one language fully understandable in another. I have tremendous respect for your art. Still, while I may not translate in a literal way, I do attempt to convert or translate between different mediums or kinds of languages, such as between music and dialogue, between science and art, and between the mind and the heart. From those perspectives, and hopefully in harmony with the themes and aims of this webinar, I'd like to suggest that in this age of intelligent systems, we can and must sustain and nurture systems that are not only intelligent, but are also systems that care. And you, as essential voices in shaping a multilingual, trustworthy future, you are key to accomplishing that goal. You can vitalize your own authentic voices to shape a future we can not only trust, but a future we can love, because you know how to translate from and to the human heart. Years ago, when I was a Chicago punk rocker, leaping all over the stage, I didn't know I was a translator. And you can surmise from this picture, I probably didn't sound or look like one either. But even at that time, and with those songs, I had the world on my mind. I wrote songs about people around the world, about their stories, about collaboration. Here we go. There, the world is just on top of my head there. And now, thanks to your organization, I've begun to realize that when I wrote songs for my band, I was indeed translating, not from English to French, although one of my songs did, but from story to song. 10 years later, when I was elected mayor of a small town in Utah, I translated the local environment, both musically to express care for it, and politically to protect it. At the same time, I composed works that translated people's oral histories into musical portraits, created from the rhythms and patterns of their voices and the unique sounds of their environment, which could include the mooing cows of a local rancher, or the cacophony of a casino, the rattling handcuffs and shackles of a jail cell, or the meows of my own dear cats. Let's see Petra on my piano. Always translating those sounds into music. So, okay, that's good for the pictures. Thank you very much, Victoria. It was while serving my 2 terms as mayor that I noted many similarities between musical and dialogical processes. When I was first elected, we were a very divided town, yet we eventually found common ground by tuning in to what underlies and unites us, just as a sustained bass note in a Bach fugue combines and unites the many contrasting voices above it. In another musical analogy, I chose, as mediators, residents who were capable of bridging the gap between opposing factions because they were like the common tones in 2 conflicting chords. To tie it all together, I conducted town meetings like they were the development section of a Beethoven symphony. While chairing these town meetings, I also noticed that very basic musical skills that are innate to all people were equally valuable and effective in civic dialogue. Skills such as active listening and responding more meaningfully because we truly heard what was said. As jazz musicians say, you've got to listen to the whole band if you ever expect to say something. And in the last few years at the University of Utah, I design and teach courses based on these observations and principles, or you might say these translations, across disciplines, such as the kindness course that I taught at the university's South Korea campus this past summer, when students cultivated and practiced their own capacities for empathy, compassion, and goodwill. I believe we can frame translation and interpretation within the context of kindness, and we can embed our own capacities for kindness within the practices of translation and interpretation. I know you already do that. For just as you translate text or the spoken word from one culture to another, you surely also translate shared connection and feeling, arriving at mutual understanding and trust. You have the skill and the will to translate and interpret the human heart. So I am confident that in this age of intelligent systems, we will sustain and nurture systems that care as you vitalize your own authentic voices to express and shape a future we can love. In last year's webinar, Christina Valentini spoke of skills in the form of logic. I ask, could we also speak of skills in the form of the human heart? Could we develop a terminology that can not only be conceived by humans, but one that can be felt? Marie Dior beautifully said, interpreters go beyond words and delve down to underlying nuances and emotional undertones, just as Juan Carlos spoke about today. I totally agree. We can indeed shape a future that values such vital nuance and tone. And Professor Ivan Bratko last year asked, can LLMs, speaking of large language models, can LLMs reason? I ask, can LLMs feel? And can they sense and truly understand feeling in others? He also asked, does AI have the ability to reason? I ask, does it have the ability to care? In my own teaching and learning, I am guided by the words of theologians such as Nell Morton, who spoke of hearing others into speech, hearing others into speech, and Martin Buber, who asked us to move beyond I-it relationships to instead foster I-thou relationships, I-thou, where the depth and value of others is always forefront in our minds and hearts. And perhaps the most moving words are on the profundity and power of listening were expressed by Mother Teresa, who, when asked by a journalist what she says to God when she prays, responded, "Oh, I don't say anything, I just listen." And when the interviewer then asked her what God says to her, she replied, "Oh, he doesn't say anything, he just listens." I love that story for what it says about the beauty of being in each other's presence and the power of truly listening. And that is what you all do, what you already do. And you are so good at it. You listen, you hear others into speech, you forge I thou relationships with your subjects and your audience. For you do what poets and philosophers throughout time try to do. You translate and interpret not only the words, but the feelings from one heart to another. And you are able to do this because you are first in touch with your own heart. You are indeed shaping a future we can trust, and the world will be a better place because of it. So I urge you to always listen to yourselves, to know yourselves, for in order to translate others' hearts, we must first know our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. It was really strong, a strong message. I'm sure everybody agrees. I can see lots of hearts here on the screen coming from our listeners, from our participants. It really shows that we need to nurture systems that care, and only humans who are with us today care. I took away some very important notions that you mentioned, that first of all, we educators should teach our students not only critical thinking and analyzing skills to have them always one step ahead of the AI, but we should teach them empathy, compassion, goodwill, as you said. And this way, they, the new generation, can be able to translate the human heart, translate the feelings from one heart to another, and this way nurture systems that can fail, because the artificial intelligence can probably analyze already something, but it cannot feel. So our task is to educate the future generation of that augmented interpreter or translator we spoke about recently, including the ability to feel and interpret and translate feelings. This way, we are going to be unbeatable indeed. So, the heart was the key point, the buzzword of this contribution, which we, as I said, saw also on the screen. Thank you very much, Philip, and we'll be looking forward to the questions from the participants after our next presentation.
Well, I mean, in that kindness course that I taught in South Korea this summer, and in my regular teaching, I include a kindness practice, a traditional one from thousands of years ago, and it doesn't have to be that particular one, but to cultivate the skills of the quality of listening to yourself and others, and knowing that you connect to others and care about others. I think that. I don't know about the budget, but I think that if employers could encourage maybe their interpreters and translators to to be in touch with their own hearts. And there are practices that are available online and in books and from teachers to plant the seeds of connection, to be aware and to develop gratitude. And it's sort of a turning within before you go without, although it can be both directions, so that you are aware of your gratitude for being a living human being, and being aware of the connection that you have, because everyone shares those feelings and those that the say bodies and elements of the earth. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question appropriately or not, but I think it's turning people to within to appreciate their own qualities as well as appreciate others, and then to make those connections. I don't know if that helped, if
That
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 answered the
that
question.
helped a lot, because it's
Okay, thank
it's
you.
a step up. Like some years ago, we talked about educating the employers, explaining to them that interpreters and translators are doing their job, etc. And now it's a new step of educating the employers about what it is to work with a human as
Yes.
opposed to AI. Have a very happy International Translation Day. Let's think about all different ways of promoting our profession, helping it evolve, nurture the systems that can feel and work together with the artificial intelligence.